see. There we go.
Got it.
All right. Hi, Denise. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. And thanks for being live on screen.
Just for a few minutes, and then I can, pay attention without the camera.
Oh, it's perfect. Well, we'll get started in just a minute. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are coming from today. Really glad to have everyone with us. My name is Alison Griffin, and I am a Senior Vice President with Whiteboard Advisors. We are a social impact agency based in Washington, D.C., and largely work at the intersection of entrepreneurship and innovation and public policy. And I co-lead our post-secondary education practice and am actually based out of the Boulder, Colorado area. So I'm coming to you still at sort of the end of the business day at 5 o'clock. Many of you may be joining us on East Coast time at 7, or maybe spread out across the country or the world. We actually started these book talks during the pandemic. So many different virtual events I know really gained steam during that time. But we started this book talk series as a way to bring community together to talk about issues and topics and hear directly from authors and contributors about their research and their passion. And the book talks really took off. And so even though some of us feel like we might be coming through or out of the pandemic, I know we're still wrestling with that in so many communities. We felt like this was something that we would carry on. And we've been bringing these book talks to our audience for the last couple years, and then hosting them every month. And so tonight, I'm really excited to introduce actually a longtime friend and colleague, Dr. Amelia Parnell. And Amelia and I met shortly after she joined the team at NASPA. Amelia, I think that was 2015, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 2015.
Ooh, I was like, I think I have to get my calendar right. But yeah. Amelia currently, we were just talking a little bit before the show started, in her day job, serves as the Vice President for Research and Policy at NASPA. But what I just learned, also hosts a podcast called Speaking of College. So maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that, Amelia, over the course of our conversation tonight. But what we're gathered to hear about this evening is the book that you have just authored, which is called You Are a Data Person, Strategies for Using Analytics on Campus. And I think one of the topics that I wrote about in the very early part of the introduction for the book talk tonight was, you sort of find yourself thinking like, I'm not a data person, that's someone else's job. That's someone else's job. That my division on campus doesn't involve data. And the thing that I have learned quickly by reading your book is, yes, you are. Every single person on the call tonight, everyone who's listening in, you are a data person. And I think with the help of Amelia this evening and our conversation, you will leave feeling far more empowered and excited about what data can do and bring to your professional role on campus. So the way that we host these talks, I spend the first half of the talk directly in just a one-on-one Q&A with Amelia. I have a couple questions for her that stem from my reading of the book. So if you haven't read it yet, a little bit of a Cliff Notes version. And then we'll spend the second half of our time together in Q&A and dialogue directly with Amelia. So if you have questions for her, if there are things that pop up over the course of our conversation, please put them in the chat. I will be watching the chat and I'm happy to sort of weave those into the conversation, or once we get to the Q&A part, we'll turn to audience questions. So with that, Amelia, welcome. Thrilled to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And thank you all for coming. I think it's if you're at least on the East Coast, it's 7 p.m. If you're on the West Coast, it's probably close to 4, Mountain Time. So the fact that you would come and want to hear about this and just engage in a conversation, I really appreciate it. And whenever you write something, you always hope that there's at least one person, that it might resonate with. And so if you get more than one, I feel like I'm already, excelling. I'm feeling pretty high on life. So just thank you all for coming. And Allison, I'm not the fastest on social media, but when I'm on there, you did a great job of letting people know what was happening. So I just want to say, I realize a monthly book talk means you can only choose one per month. And so to be that one for May, I really appreciate it. It's an honor to join you for this. And so thank you for keeping it going, and thank you for choosing the book.
You bet. Oh, absolutely. And I will say it has inspired me to read more.
Okay.
One, I've got to stay on top of my reading
every month
to have guests on the book talk. But two, it's allowed me to weave what I'm reading into my everyday work. So I'm hoping that's where we end up with our audience tonight, is how they can weave what you've written about and your expertise and professional experience into the things they're doing on their own campus. So let's just start off the top. I mean, in the title of your book, you tell us that we are all data people. So say more. What do you mean?
Well, I'll say this. It's designed to be catchy, of course, but not to be misleading. So I did not call it "you are a data scientist," or a data architect. By data person, it's really a nod to say that I think we all have a data identity. And what I mean by that is I feel like there are 6 core skill sets, 6 core things that we all have to some degree, and that we all need to use in order to make a thorough, sound, data-informed decision. And so the Cliff Notes version, which you'll figure out if you were to flip through the book, is the 6 things are curiosity and inquiry. So what I mean by that is really just the ability to ask a clear question. And it might seem like a low bar or something that you wouldn't necessarily think about, but I think all of us have probably been in a situation where you might take off trying to answer a question, and by the time you get to the answer, you realize, oh, that's probably not exactly what I needed. Maybe I should have asked a different question. Maybe I should have approached this in a different way. If you're somebody who's typically in a discussion with colleagues and you're always saying, it sounds like what we really want to know is this, that skill set around curiosity and inquiry, to me, I feel like is critical to helping you solo or either you with colleagues make a really great decision. So I want to honor that, want to acknowledge it. Naturally, you can't talk about making data-informed decisions without research and analysis. So number 2 is truly, and these are not in sequential order or ranking order, but the second thing you need is truly some level of ability to use methodologies. Now, it could be quantitative, it could be qualitative, you could be really great at looking at historical documents, but the idea that you know how to use different types of data to some degree, that's part of it as well. And typically when we say data people, we often think just research and analysis, just that person who has that deemed role of data scientist, but there's more to it. The third one is communication and consultation. And so the idea that though you may have run a really great analysis and it's, airtight, pretty set that the answers are accurate, you've still got to interpret that, explain it, translate it to somebody else, help them understand what you've learned. Maybe you're not someone who is the most adept at doing the highest level of sophisticated analysis, but you just have a knack for pulling out the most important details. Like in a 5-page report, you can point out the 3 or 4 things that really matter most, and you can convince others as to why they should care. So that to me is a third thing. The 4th and 5th are campus context and industry context. So what I mean by those are, imagine if you've been working on a campus, and some of this, I should say, a little sidebar, this is translatable. I could see a big dream for this being that this framework be translatable to other industries. But for now, we're in higher education. So by campus context, I mean, literally think like if you're working on a campus, but if you work in an organization, maybe like a NASPA, but not necessarily a campus, campus context means just generally what you know about the space that you've been working in for a long time. So let's say you've been on a campus for 10 years. That's tremendous campus context because you've seen lots of trends come, lots of initiatives come, lots of projects start, probably a couple of strategic plans come and go. You've seen changes in leadership. And so when someone says, what we should try to do, and they insert the name of this idea, you would be the person who says, well, actually, we tried something like that similarly 2 years ago, and here's how it happened. So trying to save time is one thing that brings, but it also just helps you understand more about the students that you serve. So imagine if you've been working at NASPA University for 10 years, and then you transfer and go work at Whiteboard Advisors College. My campus context at NASPA will be high, but as soon as I get to Whiteboard, it's starting to be a little bit low. So I need my colleagues to help fill in the gaps. I mentioned that to honor those people who maybe have been in a campus role for 25 years. And it's easy to say, oh, well, Amelia's been there 25 years, and make it dismissive, but no, actually it's something to actually celebrate. Industry context, similarly, if you've been involved in any national networks, let's say you frequently find yourself reading Whiteboard Advisors notes every day, or you happen to be plugged into the Chronicle or Inside Higher Ed, or maybe you are a member of a national association and you're always plugged into larger themes within higher education that provide some context for how your campus should be situated, that's always valuable. So let's say you work on a community college campus and you happen to be connected to AACC, or the American Association of Community Colleges. It helps you understand if the things that you're doing on your campus is anything like what is happening in other sectors similar to yours. So, and then the last one is strategy and planning, just the ability to put a whole plan of action together. You got the right people there, you got clear questions, you got to communicate it, but at some point you have to take action steps to make it all come together. If you're somebody who in the role is typically looking at the budget, or you're looking at the technology that's needed, those are all skill sets related to planning and executing a project. And so I think I've convinced most readers that we all have a little bit of everything and that we need a little bit of everything. And so a really great team brings all those things. A really great individual approach brings all those things. And it's a journey. It's not a just a one and done type thing. So the book is intended to be a little bit evergreen. And it's written in a way that when I say you are a data person, what I mean is you have a data identity, and it's comprised of those 6 things. Now in the book, I knew I couldn't get away with just 6 things, but if I said it was a 24-part thing, it'd make your eyes glaze over. So in the book, each of the 6 areas has 4 sub areas. And so I won't get into all of those, but just to think the big 6 buckets, those are what comprise the data identity. So that's a long answer to your question, but
No,
that's what I mean by the title.
Oh, no, it's a great answer. And it sets us up for some really deep conversations around even those 6 principles. So thank you for walking through those. Again, Cliff's Notes version. I'm also dating myself by talking about
me too, because I know what you meant.
like a yellow book that comes sits on your shelf. So given all of us in our respective roles on campuses or in higher education, which you generously acknowledged, I haven't been on a campus for a long time, but we are all touched in some way by data. What are your best suggestions for the newly minted, perhaps, to better engage with analytics? So if you're just coming to your new role, and you just touched on this a little bit, but what advice do you have for the newbie, if you will?
Yeah, well, I get several pieces of advice. 2 of them are in the book. So I'll start with those 2 and then I'll add some more to it. The first is to honestly find a data partner. And what I mean by that, not necessarily to say, well, I'm not that great at, SPSS or a platform that I need to use, so I'm just going to call somebody who knows how to use it. I don't mean a data partner in that capacity. I mean someone that you can talk with, let's say every other month or so, and you swap ideas or you swap information. Maybe you swap some reports, or maybe you talk about your respective roles, because almost every role on a campus has some requirement to use data. But just having somebody you can talk with like this, let's imagine it were you and I, that maybe every other month I say, hey, what you been reading? What you been looking at? And I say, I've been trying to make sense of this particular data point that I'm looking at in my role. Maybe you have some advice, things like that. So just getting comfortable with talking to someone else helps you better articulate your own questions, and they can give you advice and you give them advice. And the second is to take advantage of low and no cost resources to start with. The idea that you have to invest a whole lot of money in a really expensive training is good, but I say if you're just getting started, similar to if you're like me and you have had many interests. I've wanted to play piano and guitar and golf and racquetball and tennis. And you see where I'm going with this. If you wanted to learn how to play the guitar like I did, you don't have to go out and buy the most expensive guitar. Buy the guitar that you can learn the basics on, and at some point later on, invest at a higher degree. So I would make the same comparison in this space. And so there are a lot of reports, a lot of associations, think tanks, other organizations, training that's available. You can look on YouTube. And so the idea is just try to acknowledge that you're learning and see it as a long game. And there's a lot of free or low cost stuff that you can get started with. And as you start to build your expertise, then you can get more sophisticated in the place that you want to invest your time. Now the stuff that's not in the book. So those 2 tips are in the book. The other things I would add though, is to truly see data as a source, it's a tool, it's a type of information. And so I would say to the extent that you can be really good at asking questions, it helps you on your journey. So take a look at what types of articles you typically click on. Most times when I talk to people in grad prep programs and they're trying to figure out what type of study they want to do for a dissertation or a thesis, I typically say, follow your patterns. And chances are, if let's say the whole repository of all the articles in the Chronicle every day come out and you don't have time to read all of them, which ones do you find yourself clicking on all the time? And that's usually going to lead you down a path of saying, actually, I really didn't know I had such interest in higher ed finance. what can I learn more about that? In that sense, then build your curriculum or your self-training around how to learn more about the mechanics of higher ed finance. And within that, there are lots of data questions that you can answer. So that's probably my bonus piece of advice. And then the fourth one is just take it slow. Don't rush. Though everybody else around is probably saying the previous book that I did with some colleagues was called The Analytics Revolution, and the analytics revolution is here. It could make you nervous, the idea that everybody's moving at a faster clip, but honestly, just take your time with it. Find a great colleague, somebody who doesn't have to necessarily be in your division or on your campus that you can talk with and chop it up with time to time. Invest in some low cost resources, and at some point follow your patterns and the things you've been following, and take your time with it. Those are my best pieces of advice for the newly minted.
Love that. And so encouraging. Thank you, Amelia. I know there'll be many listeners even after tonight, and I think that's great advice for those, especially coming into the field. Mm-hmm. So we can talk about data at the campus level and in the global context of higher education. But when you refer to data in the book, are you talking about campus data sets? Or are you talking about national or federal data sets? Mm-hmm. And I guess, why is it important for campus professionals to be steeped in both?
Yeah, steeped in both, so you don't miss anything, really. But if I'm being honest, you can't do everything all at once. And so there's a heavy slant in the book toward the campus-based stuff. And so you'll find the book is filled with campus-based examples, quotes from professionals who work on a campus. So if you had to choose, if I had to say, the audience for the book is probably somebody who's still immersed in a campus environment. But there's still some references to some national reports, national themes. And I want to drive home the importance of having both campus context and industry context. So in this case, there'll probably be lots of examples that you will look at and say, okay, we probably could do that on our campus. If you're thinking, what do I need to know about iPads? What do I need to know about national surveys of student engagement, things like that? I say dig into those as well. But if I had to prioritize one or the other, it was intended to be a use of analytics in a campus role. Now, if after you get through your, examination of the book and you got bigger questions, I'd say definitely tap into some of the things you could find in national reports and national data sets, because those provide the context of what's happening, kind of nationally. So I can take the example of advising. I say right now, the questions around the ways that students get advice about everything from their career choices to their financial decisions to their academic progress is huge right now. And if you're working on a campus that maybe you're not even an academic advisor, maybe you work in housing, there's still something that might connect to advising, but maybe you don't see it necessarily that way. I would say still take a look at what NACADA is doing, the National Association for those who work in advising roles, because you never know how all these things are connected. But if the question of why should we be steeped in both is because you got to have knowledge of the industry in which you work, which is the industry context, because you may switch jobs. At some point, you may work in another space. You may want to know what's happening, even at the federal level. What's the Department of Education concerning itself with? So you need that just because you want to know the neighborhood that you're in. But at the same time, I'd say you need to know campus context because that's where you actually work. And so that's where your day-to-day decisions are going to probably pay out. So I shouldn't pick one over the other. I like all 6 components the same, but if I had to prioritize campus over national, I'd say campus. And don't forget about state, because state level data sets matter equally as much.
Absolutely. I just saw my friend Michael Bente join from Colorado, and there may be others who are on from state departments of higher education. So thank you for catching me when I asked about campus and federal and not state.
Oh, I didn't even know that. See, I didn't know. Hey, Michael.
I'm sure he'll jump on, and he might even have a question for you.
I see the heart.
Fantastic. Well, so this next question is probably, I'll just say this, I will own it as I ask it, and I'm asking it on behalf of those who probably feel the same way as I do. For those of us who may shy away from using data in their professional role, what is your both cautionary tale for shying away, but also your best advice to those of us who may not start from a data place?
Yeah. Well, the cautionary tale is that everybody's doing it, and what I mean by that, I can mean it in a positive way. And I can also mean it as a way to remind us hey, it's like eating your vegetables, the thing that you really don't want to do, but you still have to do it. You probably should do it. I think that's kind of where I want to go with it. So when I say everybody's doing it, give any number of positions on a campus. I think the book says very early, I think maybe somewhere around the first 10 pages, it has 2 main assumptions. One, that regardless of your role, regardless of what you do, you could be a groundskeeper, you could work in dining services, you could be the president. There's an opportunity for you to use data in your daily work. And we're at a place now where you kind of have to, I think gone are the days of just saying, well, just, we'll see how it goes. I'll just try it, just trust my gut. So there's already the kind of the groundwork there, fertile ground to say we all have to do it, we need to do it. But the second is that there's more pressure. I think students are pressuring us more to say, show me what the value of this college degree is. You got lawmakers, you got parents, you got alums, you got the professionals themselves, and there's more questioning about what we are doing with the resources we have. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's personnel. So the everybody's doing it part is that if you're nervous about it, you're in good company. We're all in a space right now where we're being asked to start to make more data-informed decisions. But that's not a bad thing because we don't have to do all of it alone. And so I think there's great opportunity to learn from each other. On the flip side, if we're motivated by fear or competition or politics, that's probably where some of the apprehension comes in, because I can say not every campus, unfortunately, has a positive data climate. Sometimes assessment and analytics and data are used as leverage at best, competition and just downright uncomfortable environment at worst. And so this idea that, let's say Alice and I both have similar roles and we have similar responsibilities, and I can show with data that my use of the resources are better and maybe yours not so much. Now we're in competition with each other. And so it creates this environment where people don't like to talk about data, because what if I show with data that some room for improvement is there? Will I be, insert terrible consequence? So I think from a cultural standpoint, we have a lot more work to do. And so I understand why some reasons might be out there that people might be hesitant. But the book, as I've written it, is filled with optimism. And so my advice for those who might find themselves saying, I'm not really, look, Amelia, I'm not a data person. Let me go into the segue here. That's why I titled the book that way. So let's say we all have a really great conversation. Somebody comes up after like, hey, Amelia, that sounds really good, but I'm not a data person. Jess, that's who does our data stuff. Kara does our analytics work. And I find myself saying, but you are a data person. No, I'm not. And I usually say, did you check the weather today? And they're like, yes. I said, what was it? And they said, well, it was 75. And I say, well, did you make any decisions about that? Yeah, I decided to wear shorts. And I know what you're trying to do. It does not mean I'm a data person. I'm thinking, no, that just means that you have a habit of using data to make informed decisions. There's levels to this. Not everybody is going to need to run the full scale analysis. So anyway, there's a lot more optimism in the book, but my best advice is 3 parts. So one of them you already heard, which is don't rush. Some things you really do have to decide quickly, but not every single data decision needs to turn around on a 24-hour basis. And I think sometimes the nervousness about using data is because you feel this pressure, like I got to get the answer right now, I got to get it right, it got to be perfect. Chances are you could probably slow down a little bit. The second is don't be nervous about asking for help. Even I've been, as you would say, steeped in this, for years. I still have my friends that I call up and say, have you seen this? I can't figure this thing out, this type of thing. And it gives us an opportunity to both help and learn, from each other. So you need that type of thing to be more comfortable. And I'd say the third is don't be afraid to acknowledge where you need to make some improvements, and also to celebrate the things that you already know. So, it's the idea that it's a learning journey, and the book is intended to be developmental to help you figure out where your strengths are. So there's a self-assessment in there where you get to ask yourself some questions, and it's not scored on purpose. You won't believe the number of people who ask me, why didn't you score the assessment? I said, because you know what I didn't want to happen? I didn't want somebody to say, I got a 65 and you got a 64. So now I'm more of a data person than you are. I think you know how we do this. It's this terrible competition type thing. And a self-assessment is not a complete set of like the end all penultimate version of questions, but instead to spark you into a place where you start thinking about what you could be doing more of to build your skill set. So I'd say don't rush, be honest about what you need to know, and it'll probably work out, just fine. And again, it has to take place in an environment on a campus that is conducive for positive sharing, collaborative engagement. And not every campus is like that, but I have this big dream that hopefully one day we will get to that point, because everybody's doing it anyway.
That's right. We've all bought the book and followed your advice, and felt a lot more confident in how we fit in to the data community. So and you referenced this a little bit just in your most recent answer, but can you share a time or give an example of a time in your experience where the use of data really impacted a campus or a campus division, particularly when you think about serving a highly critical need that many of our learners have?
I can make it practical. Speaking of like campus versus, state or federal, Honestly, when I first started at NASPA, this was probably 2015, just kind of getting a sense of what are some big topics in student affairs. But right around 2016, it was a huge conversation again about food insecurity, or basically emergency aid. And if anybody recalls what it was like 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was a different conversation than what we've been seeing now. Like back then, when we first introduced this topic, there were still some campuses that were like, not our students. We don't have that many students who are food insecure. I don't really think that's us. We don't really have those issues with housing. And it was really a prompt to say, are you sure? Maybe you should take a closer look at the rates at which students are coming to the health and fitness center early in the morning or late at night to avoid peak times, because they maybe need to use the shower, things like that. If they had a food pantry, they were certain that there weren't that many people who were coming. It's like, maybe take a look at your aggregate numbers of students and how much of each resource are you using, that type of stuff. And maybe the idea that was not really marketed well or not communicated well on purpose, because some said that, hey, if we over communicate this, we might run out of resources. So there was ample opportunity for them to start using some more data informed approaches to see just how much of an issue it was, and if they found out how much of an issue it was, what they could actually do to address those needs. And so to me, I think it made a huge difference. And I think using data, not in a way that would actually make students uncomfortable to ask them specifically about their areas of critical need, but truly from an operational standpoint to say, actually, we have a bigger issue than we thought. What if we were to allocate resources in a different way? And so if back in 2015, 16, the question was, do we have an issue? If now it is, we have an issue, how do we address it? I've seen positive movement. For example, if 5 or 6 years ago, it was a question of whether or not we should have a food pantry and how much food do we need in it. Now it's how do we figure out what strategic community partnerships to make, and how do we offer more healthy foods and vegetables in the food pantry? So it not only helped with understanding the nature of a critical need on campuses, but it also helped them improve their delivery of resources to support that need. So this is one of many, but I'm especially happy that campuses were saying they were using a data-informed approach to make something better for students.
Well, and just there's so much more work to do with respect to food and housing insecurity, but think about where we might be if those conversations had not started in a data-informed way. 7 years ago, or even earlier.
I would say even earlier than that. I know better than to say NASPA dug into it. Because we've had scores of, you get the Hope Lab, UNCF, and Ascendia, all the people who do the work much earlier than us, but a lot more campuses now are having a whole different type of conversation. And I'm happy about that.
Absolutely. And meeting the needs of students, particularly over the last 2 years with everything that's been going on. Yep. So Amelia, you know me, I could go on for forever. I have a couple other questions, but I do want to give our audience an opportunity to interact with you directly. If anyone has questions or even comments, or you want to share an anecdote from your own experience with Amelia, I'd like to open up the mic and give you the opportunity to weigh in. Would anyone like to weigh in?
Ooh,
Michael. So good to see you.
Great to see you all too. Thanks so much for this. It's all really enlightening to hear this conversation. I guess one question I would have, and Amelia, I really appreciate the language you use when you talk about things being data informed, maybe rather than data driven, because I think there's a difference there. The data tell wonderful stories, but the data all by themselves maybe don't tell the whole story. And there's so much more that helps to illuminate a certain topic. One question for you. How do you maybe balance when we're putting together data, when we have access to data, how do you balance being able to tell stories of student experiences versus that hard accountability conversation? And a lot of times people's minds go directly to that, but how do you balance those two things in that data informed way?
Yeah. Well, to your first point, I like to make the joke and say data don't drive because they don't have a car, and so they have to inform, which means it's to help you make your best decision. And I think, and I'm gonna come back to your question about accountability. I think we're at a place now where even the terms of how we describe traditional data roles are continuing to evolve. So the traditional institutional research office, we might see that shift to something like decision support. And you need that across, regardless of what the function of the campus is. Not saying that the IR office is going away, absolutely not. But there will still be needs for decision support in the HR office, and the budget and finance office, and academic affairs, so on and so forth. So what I would say is, I don't think we can really get rid of either. You have to have accountability. I oftentimes describe it as the balance of accountability and innovation, because on a lot of campuses, you have to be accountable for the things that you've already invested in. So insert policymakers, those who would say, what have you done with the resources that we've given you? So it's this heavy emphasis, bring in accreditors, bring in whomever it is. And oftentimes that could literally drive all the efforts into a direction that feels like it's very reactive, which is that I've got to show, I've got to measure, I've got to prove, which is fine. But you also still have to have room for innovation, because if higher ed is going to continue to transform itself and evolve, then you do need those stories. You need those reflections from students about how they're entering into life after college and what that means for them, and how can we prepare them for that. So I think it has to be a delicate balance between the two. And I don't know that we can ever get to a place where one is more valuable than the other. And I've seen an overcorrection in both directions. And I'll start with the overly used anecdote, that person who just will not let go of the idea that this thing that they want to do is the thing to do. Well, I talked to 2 students yesterday and they told me they liked it. You know what I mean? But we have 20,000 students. Are you sure? That type of thing. On the flip side, you have this hard and fast spreadsheet that is like impenetrable. Like nobody messes with this spreadsheet. Whatever the spreadsheet says, that's how we make decisions. Every so often, you got to get outside the spreadsheet. You still have to talk to individuals to see how it impacts them. So I would probably give a perfect example in my mind of this discussion around predictive models or predictive analytics. I say several years back, maybe a decade ago, when many campuses were using those, they saw that as like, well, whatever the predictive model says, we got to give some extra, credibility to that. And it's true that it's a tool to be used, but I don't know that I've ever heard of or seen a 100% predictive model. It's intended to help you make a decision, help inform your decision. But at some point, you still got to trust your own, knowledge of what's happening on the campus. So in the book, near the end, I put some predictions in there. And one of them is that artificial intelligence will not replace human decision-making. And at some point, you need to have the tool of that, but you also need to still be able to have your own contextual pieces to add to it. So you ask me, how do you manage it? I think you try to keep them in balance. You know what I mean? At some point, if you find yourself, I think a good checkpoint is that if you find yourself oftentimes kind of frequently in the discussion around accountability, so much so that the narrative is one single narrative and you can't get around that, that's probably an indication that you got to go a little bit broader. The story has multiple versions to it. On the flip side, if there are so many versions of this thing that the question that you're trying to address is unclear, or the purpose of what you're trying to address is not evident, then you need to have some structure there and maybe go back into an existing data set. So think of it like this constant balancing of these two things on a scale. And if you're lucky, they balance out and stop moving. If you're not, then that sounds so terrible. It sounds like you're being jerked in 2 different directions. But does that make sense though, Michael, what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. And,
okay.
and I think that's right on, finding that balance between it all and making enhancing our ability to tell the stories in all the different ways. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you need the story. And I would say anybody who says not, I'm like, well, that's where the communication part comes in, because the story is what gets people to take action. You know what I mean? So it's now in the cheesy way, I don't really like this. I think this is like marketing speak when they say data tell and stories sell. I'm not looking, what are we selling? You know what I mean? I don't know that I'm selling a concept, but I do think the idea that data can tell a story is a true thing. And I do think you're trying to bring in groups of people to take action with you.
Absolutely.
It's a great question.
That's a great question. And I was thinking back, Mike, when you asked that to the question I asked about, those of us, I'm looking at myself, who may feel like they shy away from using data in their professional life. It's because I tend to tell the story. I want the anecdote. I want the example, but what a powerful statement when you can bring the storytelling together with the data and actually elevate the need or the opportunity or the thing that needs to be addressed.
It's a great question, because some would say, which should come first? I mean, this is not what you asked, but if somebody does have the anecdote, I don't want to dismiss that. Sometimes the 1 or 2 students who told you about that thing could be a bigger indication of something than you thought. But I would say, just be careful with it, before you go too far. Back to that whole asking a clear question, making sure that you know what you want to do. Mm-hmm. We got something in the comments.
Yes, Jason, I see that you had a comment. Please jump in.
Oh yeah, namahi Amelia for your kōrero and your insightful things around the data. I was just following on from Michael's question, like in terms of when data can clearly show that it's unequivocal in that 20,000 people, or students you were talking about. When can a student or an individual or an idea embrace and say, hey, Professor Amelia, I've got this, but nobody's actually looking at this little, there's only 10 of us, all the rest are in favor of these other things. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, which you have to go with the impact. And so I would say it's very easy to say, well, because I think most times in higher ed, we struggle with this balance of tailored approaches. I'm coming back to your question too. Tailored approaches versus the macro scaled approach. So let's say we find out very quickly that students who are college athletes would benefit from having additional 3 hours of academic advice. So making this up on the fly, but let's just say that's the case. Let's say you have 10 athletic teams. And so if you had enough resources, you could give every single student athlete that same prescribed intervention, but it might be too expensive. You may not have enough people, you may not have enough resources to do that. So it's commonplace on campuses to say, well, I think that close connection to an advisor, plus frequent meetings with a financial advisor, as well as someone in financial aid, plus maybe 3 extra hours of time with the faculty member, plus 2 hours of service, plus 3 more hours of clubs and activities. If they do all these things and we can give it all to a student, then they'll probably graduate on time. Well, I guess they could, because they probably have had every type of prescribed intervention that you can imagine at the highest level. But if you have 20,000 students, how do you do that at scale? And so oftentimes you'll find campuses saying, well, whatever helps the majority of the students get across the finish line, we'll do that. And then you find yourself with the group that you just described, which may be that group of students that's not in the 18,500, but instead maybe the 150, not even the 1,500, the 150 that have a very unique experience, very unique identity. What I would say is, my 2 reasons for saying don't ignore them. 1, because those students are part of your campus mission. So if at any point you find yourself in a discussion where like, well, we got 18,500 out of the 20,000, or we got, 18,850, how much more do you want? I'd say I want the other 150, because those other 150 are supposed to be served equally as much by the campus mission as the original majority group. But that's not enough. At some point, you've got to explain the impact of not serving the students who are different. I oftentimes find it's the way we say we want diversity of thought in the classroom. If we all think the same way, then groupthink doesn't lead us to a place of ingenuity and innovation. You got to serve the students who don't fit into the huge majority as well, because that's how we get better. And so if you have, let's say, a design experience for the majority of the students, and you have a group of students who don't experience it that way, we may continue to perpetuate the same types of inequities that we want to stop. And if those students are saying, hey, this is not how I'm experiencing the campus, then you got to do something. On the flip side, I don't want to make it all negative. If that small group of students who don't fit the main 20,000 has something really, really unique to offer, really, really bright and promising perspectives, that makes our overall campus experience better. It helps the other majority group thrive in different ways. And so to honor that, I would say if you find yourself in a conversation where someone is saying, well, we got the majority, let's keep moving. The data points that are a little bit, we would say, outliers, they're not intended to be cast away or shoved off the side of the page. They're intended to be revisited to say what makes them different. And if they're different in a way that we can address and support and affirm, then let's do that. I think what you run up against, though, is the temptation to spread maybe limited resources, and they want to put the biggest resources in the area that on paper seem to make the biggest impact. But you never know what investing in that smaller group of students or that smaller program could do over the long term. And every student, if we're talking about students, has the bright potential to contribute back to the campus in ways that are immeasurable. So that's a great question. I think I want to write that down. If we save this one, that might be like part 2 of the book, because I hear that in so many different ways. But no, I love it. I think it's probably my favorite question I've gotten so far. That's a great one.
It's a really good
very
one.
feel good question too.
And I think about, when you were, Amelia, talking, Jason, I agree, like, great question. I'm so glad you brought up that point. One of the things that I was thinking about as Amelia, you were answering that, was one, the example of food and housing insecurity that you just used. But then I go back, again, dating myself, 25 years to my undergraduate experience. And I think about the group that we had on our campus, which were our students over traditional age. And it was this very small group of students, but they advocated for better policies and programming, particularly like student programming that aligned with their interests. And now I think about where we are in 2022, and our focus around all learners and adult students, and how do we ensure that our campus experience is meeting the needs of all learners in a lot of different dimensions. But if it hadn't been for a small group of students continually raising their hands and showing up and asking questions and asking to be included, the evolution, even though we have so much more work to do in this area, I don't believe that it would have had the same level of or degree of momentum, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that small group of students, Jason, that you refer to and ask about, are seeding a new approach and constituency, that higher education is in place to serve and is.
Oh yeah, I would celebrate it because I think that's where the innovation lies among many other places. I'll give you another tangible example that just came to mind when you mentioned that. Picture, you all seen the Golden Girls, picture it, 2020, the pandemic came, and a lot of residential campuses that were not used to delivering support services like advising and housing and things like that, or even, programming in general in a virtual environment, we're like, what do we do? We've never had to do this 100% virtual type thing. Who had been doing it for a while? Online only institutions. They were like, welcome to Saturday. We've been doing this, for a long time. But typically when you would see reports that would come out about the current state of higher education, oftentimes it was a very traditional residential type thing. Rarely did you see a lot of narratives carved out about the online only institution. And then when we all needed to develop some type of strategies, we all went and looked at what is making these online institutions thrive, how they've been doing with secret sauce type of thing. So I would say, though they may not have been discussed in great degree then, they certainly were when we really needed to see. And some of the things that we were touting as like brand new, they were like, been doing it, catch up, type of thing. So I certainly don't want to position a group of students or a program that's lesser addressed than others as something that has a deficit. If anything, it's filled with promise, and that's something that we should affirm. So I love the question. But yeah, so I should have no favorites. I shouldn't, but the bar is high now. Let's see, we got one. Right. Claudia though asked a good one. Do you see changes coming in terms of how universities may expect staff and even faculty to become data persons more now than ever? I think everybody's doing it. Frankly, I think the expectation is probably the word that I would probably put in bold here. I think it's already built in, to some degree. I think we're used to being expected to measure stuff. I can't think of a single professor or professional who hasn't been evaluated at least on an annual basis. Somebody's going to come and say, let me talk about your performance. And so the idea that somebody's going to be asking you to show with information the impact of your work, that's not inherently new. But I do think we'll see more calls from accreditors to show a little bit more about the depth of what students learn and what they know and what they can do. I think we'll see more expectations from students to hold us accountable for how we're using the resources, i.e. their tuition dollars, things like that. So I think collectively the campus will be pushed on to do different types of examinations of how we do our work. And that might feel new, but I don't think that the inherent need to use data in your daily work will be anything that someone would say I've never been asked to do. I think the types of questions will be asked will feel new. I think the timing of those questions will feel new. And I think the stakes for those questions will feel new, which might feel like, am I about to be left behind? Do I need to sign up for a course? That type of thing. But again, back to my point, don't rush. We're all in a space now where I think this is an opportunity for us. And I want to make data-informed decision-making sound cool, because in essence, we really do use data to some degree in our daily lives, our daily, work. I bet you if I ask anybody on this call what your average cost of your light bill is, you probably know. And if you've been tracking it for 3 or 4 months and all of a sudden it dipped or went up, you'd be like, hey, what's going on here? Do I need to open the window? The type of thing. Gas prices went up. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure we know what to do. You can tell when decisions need to be made. So I want to remind us, and maybe throughout the book, that not every decision, for example, has to be a 100% precise decision. There are some who work on a campus, enrollment managers, institutional researchers that have official mandatory reporting responsibilities. Yes. Okay. Difference between 87% and 92%. Maybe thousands of dollars. But if you're working on a program and you're trying to put something together and you got 80% versus 82%, 80+% is just fine. You know what I mean? And I think if you find yourself having conversations that feel a little bit too high pressure, just take it down a little bit. You know what I mean? I think we got more than enough time, to get there. So I really want the book to spark conversation, and get people to the idea that there's room for everybody at the table. And though you may not be the one who's like running, just clamoring to get to the spreadsheet first, if you have these other 5 things, you got something to offer, and it could be a better environment. So Claudia, great question. I hope I answered it.
Awesome. Thank you. Other questions or comments or reflections? Kara.
Thank you. So my question's kind of a little related to one that you asked earlier, Allison. So you were talking more about like an individual who might be nervous when it comes to using data. So mine's about more of a division or an entire organization. And so I work at a community college, and our division is relatively, most of us would fall into that newbie category that we were talking about. And so we've prioritized creating kind of a data literacy training series for the fall. And I'm part of the group that's going to be putting that together. And so just kind of interested in your thoughts about key components for people that are, when you point something out, definitely interested, but also very busy and overwhelmed and kind of don't feel like they have the time to look into things. So what would you advise could be great components for in a scenario like that in a training series? And if you have any resources or other books or articles that you would point to, I'd love to hear those too.
Actually, I'm doing a talk tomorrow, and in that, my last slide, I have a set of resources. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna mention these resources now so I don't forget them, and you can write them down, and then I'll come back to it. So there's a brand new book. So of course, one book is, this book, that one. But other books, in case you have colleagues that are working maybe in a more academic affairs capacity, or a lot of other ones, if they have any interest, and I haven't finished because I just got the book and only gone through the first part of it, but it's called Reframing Assessment to Center Equity. So it's about theories, models, and practices. It's a new book from Gavin Henning, Janina Baker, Natasha Jankowski, Ann Lundquist, Eric Montenegro. I'm reading these names fast, like you could write them all down. But the title of the book is Reframing Assessment to Center Equity. Hold on. This commercial brought to you, but it looks like this. So that way, if anybody's watching the recording, that's it. It's a thick book filled with lots of practical examples. So again, if they don't have time to read, I'd say take that one, slowly over time. There's also a report, and this is one that's not necessarily a data report, but it connects to the kind of the purpose of why we do stuff. If you want something that relates, that's very easy to read from a what should I do standpoint. It's not a data resource, but it's still relevant. It's a report that we did called Misunderstanding Your Students, Affirming student identities. So, and approaches for doing that. So it talks about how you can engage with students on the topics of race, gender, sexual orientation, and honestly, that makes so many missteps. It's not a perfect guide, so it's not all encompassing, but when you're doing your data informed work, eventually it's going to impact students. And so that report is talking about how you can take the results of your work and make them fruitful and engaging, when you're talking with students. So there's an older report called the Data Enabled Executive. It's one of my favorite ones. It's Jonathan Gagliardi and Jonathan Turk, and it's talking about it from a leadership standpoint. It's more of kind of just a traditional read, so it's not filled with examples, but it's so much as to say, if you're thinking themes in higher education, why should people be thinking and be enabled with data to make decisions? And then honestly, you have the classic, like a Michael Jordan shoe, you know what I mean? Like it just never goes out of style. This report is one of my favorite ones. It's old. I'll tell you that it's old. It's 2014, which in these terms, you're like 8 years ago, it's done. But if you really want a great report, just to break the ice to get started with, it's fire, just like a pair of Jordans. 11's my favorite. The report is called Learning from Fast Gaining, and I think High Performing Institutions. And it's by Chaplot, Johnstone, and I can't remember the other authors, but Learning from Fast Gaining and High Performing, I think that's the name of it, institutions. It is 10 analyses to spark discussion with colleagues. And it's truly written in a way, it is not filled with a bunch of jargon. These are truly like just 10 specific examples of analyses that you can run to talk about things with your colleagues. I like it a lot. So that's a format that I think is really good. If you ever want to just have something very, very simple to follow, my favorite newsletter is called The Node, N-O-D-E. And if you look for it on Twitter, it's called N-O-D-E 4IR. So at N-O-D-E 4IR. It's filled, it's a weekly newsletter that comes out, usually has one data point, and then it has like links to a really good set of reports and stuff like that. So it's really good. All right. those are the resources free, go out, find. My advice to you about how to set this up though. So if you got a group of people and you're like, hey, we're just getting into this, want to see if anybody wants to build some skill sets. What I would say is maybe try to mix it up. And I promise I did not intend it this way, but if I had to think about a robust toolkit of what people need to get into the habit of making thorough data-informed decisions, you need to learn how to ask clear questions. You need her communication and consultation skills. So work on how to deliver information for multiple audiences, how to translate things. Of course, you need a little bit of research chops. So you got to learn the basics of survey design, the basics of answering focus group questions, things like that. Have them see if they can dig into the campus fact book or other resources that IR puts out that has a lot of campus context in it. I would encourage them to follow any of the national groups or these books that I've suggested for industry context. And then I think you probably, since you asked the question, have a little bit of strategy, perspective. So I guess what I'm saying is, to the extent that you can mix it up, almost like take the pill, take the medicine and mix it in with applesauce. Some may gravitate naturally to the more data, traditional workshop-y type things. Others may gravitate a little bit more to a really well-written report. Others may really like the process of just asking clear questions. So what I can say is a toolkit or an approach that helps them see that making data-informed decisions be a positive experience is not exclusively in the data literacy must mean you need to know how to interpret the strength of a model, or how to use regression analysis. That's part of it, but I don't know that everybody needs to have that exact same skill. So I'll also say this, even though it's recorded, if you ever want some advice, Parnell at NASPA.org, I can give you some better advice. Because I also talk fast, and I realize you might not have caught all of the things I just said. So if you drop me an email, I'll send you a note with some of this stuff in it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So gracious, Amelia, thank you. And one of the things that I actually failed to mention, but many have probably figured out in your bio, when I introduced you, is before your role at NASPA, you were previously the Director of Research Initiatives at AIR. Mm-hmm. So talk about having some just really rich professional experience and exposure to these issues and supporting colleagues as they build their own research agendas. Thank you for sharing that with us tonight.
Oh, yeah. So
awesome.
Previous to NASPA, so NASPA is the association that's primarily focused on student affairs and student life and professionals who work in that space. AIR, as you would imagine, is all things institutional research, or that IR function all day, every day. And so just as an extra tidbit, before I worked there, I worked for 7 years for the Florida legislature in an office that was like your IR office, but for the legislature. So I didn't even realize that was a thing. They definitely didn't call it the IR office for the legislature, but it was the research office. And so representatives and senators would call all the time, much like a probably cabinet member would call that office and say, we're thinking about doing this. Can you get some data on that? And so that office, we all had access to all the state level databases. So the Department of Education, Transportation, Health, all that kind of stuff. And every time we would get a question, we would tap into those state level databases and answer the question. So I didn't even realize I had a role that was like that of an institutional researcher until I started working for the Association for Institutional Research. And so in that role at that national association, I got to learn more about how campuses, kind of more at a macro level, make data informed decisions. But I got to see it from the viewpoint of the individuals who were frequently being asked to run those analyses. So is it Kara or Kara? Kara?
It's Kara.
Kara, I appreciate your question so much, because on a lot of campuses, there would be this debate about whether there should be one single source of the truth, like the idea that the IR office is the only office that can run the analysis. And let's say that your office is not IR, your office might be, what is your office?
So I work in enrollment management and student success.
Perfect example. Enrollment management. You may have some data analysis needs that you didn't necessarily have to ask the IR office to do, but you need to do it. You may want to consult with them, that type of thing. So there's ongoing question about where does IR fit into campus level decision making? Well, if it's mandatory reporting like iPads, of course, they can probably handle that. And they still wanted to have an opportunity to connect to enrollment management. The idea was like, why are we always called to just send a data report, but we don't get to actually consult and say, what questions are you trying to answer? Maybe we could work on them together. So I got to learn about, of course, the function of IR on a campus, but got to learn a lot about the relational aspects of IR too, and how there are a lot more data questions across a campus than just those things that are mandatorily required by, statute or other governing body. So it gave me a really great vantage point. I got to learn a lot about what makes IR special. I met a lot of really great, cool people. I miss it a lot sometimes. And when I wrote this book, I was mostly concerned that the IR community would welcome it and not make it seem like it was like, oh, you made data sound too simple. Like, no, this is supposed to be supplemental to what we're already doing. So not taking anything away from the formal training necessary to do that type of work. But what I can say, it was a nice fertile ground, though, to have a discussion about how data conversations on campus can spread outside of just the IR office, so that when you have an office of enrollment management or HR or academic affairs, there's room for all of us to actually tap into data sets and do our own work. But don't forget about your friends in IR. We need them too. They should be our partners, collaborators, not a one-way transactional thing, and not an afterthought if you're making great progress, because they can provide the macro level context. So let's say, for example, let's say you're a faculty member and you want to run your own analysis, but you want to see maybe how your results compare to other areas of the campus, maybe other faculty, other departments. IR can probably help you with some of that stuff. So yeah, I got a great opportunity to learn about a really special function that doesn't get nearly as much attention. I have a great bias towards saying, get to know your local IR professional. They have a lot to offer.
Claudia appreciated that shout out. Yeah. So I saw her note in the,
I see. Okay,
chat. So thank you. What a good reminder. And, as we're coming upon our hour together, Amelia, one thing, as you were just describing your own professional journey, I think about, all of our up and coming professionals, whether they are currently in graduate school or in, assistantships or internships, or playing different roles on campuses, really trying to figure out what's next. I know, you and I both share a background in student affairs administration and an interest in a lot of these issues. But how do we build momentum and really help all of our colleagues across the post-secondary education space get comfortable with data? How do we, what's your last tidbit?
My last tidbit is probably back to the same place we started. But if I shouldn't have a favorite piece of the data identity framework, I do have a soft spot for campus context, but curiosity and inquiry. There's a certain skill related to being able to ask a clear question. And I like the idea that so many people were like, what we should do? We should do a survey. And oftentimes when someone says they want to do a survey, I'll say, what do you want to know? And they'll insert the question. I'll say, well, play it all the way out. What would you do with the results once you get them? And they'll say, I thought I might do this. Well, maybe I really want to know that. The ability to continue to refine your own curiosity to a place where you start to get more precise with what you want to know, that helps you be a better steward over resources. Because honestly, every data point that you have to collect from scratch, it does cost time and resources. And so the most sophisticated analyses sometimes, if they're not used, it could be a little bit of a waste. You know what I mean? So I think we have a lot of data at our disposal that we don't have to collect new data for. It all comes down to figuring out how we want to use it. And so for those who are just really getting into it, take your time, don't rush, learn a little bit more about your role, what you're doing with it. And then as you start to get more comfortable, find a data partner, somebody that you can talk with. And then maybe together you can scope out something that might be a really meaningful study that looks at the macro as well as the micro issues as well. And as you start to do that, rinse and repeat, get connected to some national networks, come to some great book talks, build your industry context, your campus context, invest in your professional development. I'd say start low cost and no cost. But at some point, to Kara's point, you're going to need to invest a little bit more. Find a great conference to go to, invest in some webinars and training and things like that. But I'd say it's a long game. In the book, like I mentioned, it's intended to be read now, put it on the shelf, come back to it 2 years later, because your career is going to change. And so the mix of those skill sets is going to continue to evolve. So my best advice, get the book. I think get the book, read the book. Not that it's going to solve everything, but start with the book. And then, reach out to a friend and try to be honest about what you need to know, but don't be afraid to dive in. Everybody's doing it. We kind of have to do it. And I think that's the way the future is going to be anyway. So
amazing.
That's my best advice.
So much, Amelia. I also put just in the chat the Amazon link to the book, and I hope that if you all haven't had a chance to pick it up yourselves, that you'd at least get a copy and share it with a friend. So the more the merrier, and I'm just incredibly grateful to the time that you shared with all of us tonight.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for inviting me, and thank all of you for coming. I really appreciate it.
You bet. I hope everyone enjoys their Tuesday evening. Now it's evening, I think, for most of us. And thank you again for joining us. Be well, everyone.
Yeah. And Jess, I owe you an email. I don't know if you saw my DM. All right. Catch you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Very good. Be well.